January the 13th, 2020, Coolock, Dublin. A group of children stumble upon a discarded sports bag, the contents of which shocked the entire Irish nation. Dismembered torso, 4 limbs and a pair of flip-flops, to whom these disturbing items belonged. This question bothered Gardaí and the public alike for hours. The flip-flops must be there to send a message. Why would someone send them off with someone's chopped up remains otherwise? Before this horrifying discovery starts making rounds on the news, a distressed sister has shared a public appeal on Facebook, looking out for her teenage brother. Has anyone seen my brother? He's only 17 and he's been missing since yesterday evening, and no one has heard from him or can get through to him, and anyone he's usually with is texting me looking for him, she stated in her post. Little did she know that her brother was not only executed but dismembered, with his human remains hidden in multiple locations across the city, his head in a burned out car. The unfortunate teenager turned out to be Keane Mulready-Woods.
Partial human remains discovered at Feud Drive, Priorswood, Coolock, on Monday, the 13th of January 2020, are those of Keane Mulready-Woods.
Who was this child, and what could he have possibly done to face this horrific treatment? To find the answer to our questions, we'll have to dive into the infamous feud that took lives, created terror in the city with small explosives detonating in streets every other day, and shook the city by core. The Drogheda Feud. So how did this tragedy begin? On January the 12th, 2020, Keane Mulready-Woods, sporting a Hugo Boss tracksuit and a Canada Goose jacket, made his way through the quiet city centre of Drogheda. He walked across St Dominic's Bridge over the River Boyne, and that's the last anyone saw of him. After that, what remained of him were severed body parts. The severity of the crime makes one wonder why someone would do that to a child. Keane wasn't like other teenagers. According to RTE, the Irish broadcaster, he was not only involved in the narcotics business, but was also the godson of leading Gangland figure Owen Maguire, the head of one of the warring gangs in the then raging Drogheda feud. However, his connection isn't the only reason for this tragedy. There was an incident a few weeks earlier which could have intensified the rival gang's anger towards Keane's godfather. But before we tell you this story, let's just take a look at Keane's life. Born into a working class family in County Louth, Keane grew up in an environment where opportunities were few, but risks were many. A fan of motocross and owner of a scrambler bike, he was a popular youth in the area. He attended St Oliver's Community College, but education couldn't stop him from involvement in the life of crime. Like many teens in his neighbourhood, he was lured into the Underworld's clutches before he fully understood its consequences. Groomed by Drogheda's gangsters, he was seen as both expendable and instrumental. A young, impressionable figure who could be used to settle scores in the brutal narcotic wars. According to Declan Power, the then independent councillor for Drogheda, when you're living in a disadvantaged area like Rathmullen, it's so bloody easy to groom a young guy at 12, 13 or 14 into crime. He doesn't have the money or the support at home or elsewhere. Reports suggest that by the age of 14, he was running errands for local dealers, delivering packages, collecting money and acting as a lookout. The allure of quick cash and status overshadowed other concerns. Keane was associated with the Owen Maguire gang, one of the 2 gangs engaged in turf war. In fact, he was the gang's enforcer at the time of his death. The war was getting uglier day by day, but how did it get this much ugly? The Drogheda feud, like other gangland feuds, started with a turf war, a struggle to control the coke market. On one side, there was Owen Maguire and Cornelius Price. If the name rings a bell, it does for the right reasons, as we've covered Price in detail in one of our episodes. Nevertheless, on the other side, there were 2 brothers, whose names are not mentioned by the media because of legal reasons, and Richie Carberry, heading the gang known as the Anti-Maguire faction. The feud escalated in 2018 when Robbie Lawlor, an anti-Maguire psychopath, was sent to take out Maguire. However, Owen Maguire survived his injuries but was paralysed for life. The rival gangsters mocked Maguire for getting paralysed via social media posts and calls. After that, Keith Brannigan, a member of the Maguire gang, was executed. The Maguire faction avenged by taking out Richard Carberry in 2019. Richard Carberry was Lawlor's brother-in-law and was very close to him. His death angered him immensely. After getting released from jail, he wanted revenge for Carberry's execution. According to one theory, he believed that Mulready-Woods had played a part in the execution by telling the assassins of Richard Carberry's whereabouts. Now comes the incident that we referred to earlier in our video. Shortly after getting released from jail, Lawlor was ambushed by a gang of teenagers, including Mulready-Woods, while leaving the gym. The boys beat him and took his gym bag and a pair of flip-flops. Reportedly, Keane filmed the incident and posted it on social media to humiliate the senior criminal. Not just Keane, but other young members of the gang started sharing videos and pictures wearing Lawlor's flip-flops to mock and ridicule him. Now that was an audacious move, wasn't it? Nobody could imagine this juvenile act would have such deadly response. But then Lawlor was no ordinary criminal. He was a psychopath, a man who had killed his own father. Lawlor planned the horrific hit, but he told Keane's pals that he was only going to give him a punishment beating over a small narcotic debt. But what he actually did was downright gruesome. It began as an ordinary Sunday evening on January the 12th, 2020. Keane Mulready-Woods was last seen alive crossing St Dominic's Bridge in Drogheda. What should have been an unremarkable night would soon unravel into a sequence of events so horrifying that it would etch itself into Ireland's collective memory. Unbeknownst to him, Keane was walking straight into a deadly trap. He was lured into a house at Rathmullen Park, a location linked to one of Drogheda's most violent gangs. Inside, the walls of the seemingly ordinary house concealed a setting for a crime of unimaginable brutality. There, Keane was executed, and the violence didn't stop with his death. What followed was an act so barbaric, it sent shockwaves far beyond Drogheda. Keane's body was dismembered, his remains turned into grim symbols of intimidation. The perpetrators, led by the notorious Robbie Lawlor, sought to weaponise the crime itself, both to send a message to their rivals and to instill terror in the local community. It seems torturing the child wasn't enough for him. Taking it to the extremes and crossing the boundaries of humanity, he cut the teen's body with a knife. It showed that he was willing to go to great lengths to take revenge. Over the next 48 hours, fragments of Keane's remains began to appear in locations designed to shock and horrify. On January the 13th, a sports bag was found abandoned in the Coolock area of North Dublin. Inside were Keane's arms and legs, alongside flip-flops, crudely packed and left in plain sight. These flip-flops weren't just a random addition, but a symbol of revenge and humiliation by Robbie Lawlor. Less than 2 days later, a stolen car in Ballybow was set ablaze, and inside its smouldering trunk was more of Keane's remains, his head and hands. Investigators later recovered his torso weeks later after the killing, during a painstaking search of Wainsground near the Rathmullen property where he was eliminated. The dismemberment wasn't just a grotesque act, it was a calculated move to strike fear into the hearts of gang members and the public alike. It worked. The discovery of Keane's remains sparked outrage and revulsion across Ireland. Gardaí, Ireland's police force, described the crime as unprecedented in its savagery. Even seasoned officers, hardened by years of dealing with gang violence, struggled to contain their horror. Law enforcement, meanwhile, was thrust into a race against time. The elimination wasn't just a crime, it was a declaration of war in Drogheda's ongoing gang feud. Gardaí launched an intensive investigation, sealing off the Rathmullen property as a crime scene and doubling patrols in areas linked to the feuding factions. The brutality of the incident left little doubt about who was responsible. The public, however, didn't wait for official confirmation. The gruesome details, amplified by social media, spread like wildfire. WhatsApp groups buzzed with rumours and unverified images purporting to show Keane's mutilation. Gardaí issued desperate pleas for the public to stop sharing the material, citing the anguish it caused Keane's grieving family and the unintended support it lent to his killers. After the teenager's death, Lawlor was bound to become the suspect in the eyes of both the rivals and Gardaí. Yet, he cared for nothing. Just 24 hours after the teenager's dismemberment remains were found in Coolock, he was strutting around Drogheda. According to Gardaí, he did this as an act of bravado towards his enemies in Drogheda's feud. What's more, after Keane's death, members of the anti-Maguire faction started celebrating and mocking the incident on social media. Some of them even trolled his sister, passing insensitive remarks. Nevertheless, Lawlor himself wasn't safe, being an active part of a full-blown gang war. The Guardian official warned him that he was under threat. However, he still decided to travel to Belfast in April 2020, which cost him dearly. But his decision to travel to Belfast on Saturday ended up costing him his life when he was blasted in the head at point-blank range. He'd gone to collect a €20,000 narcotic debt, but it turned out to be a trap, as when he entered the house looking for the narcotic dealer, a hitman entered through the back door. Lawlor turned tail and fled the property into the street, giving chase to the assailant before getting hit at the front door. Later, it turned out that Robbie Lawlor was double-crossed by his allies, the McCarthy-Dundon mob, who supplied him with a weapon loaded with blanks. The young gangsters tried to earn the trust of the notorious psychopath and then arranged his execution with the Maguire associates. Reportedly, the Maguires paid the McCarthy-Dundon gang €100,000 to arrange the psycho's killing by persuading him to travel north to collect debt from a Belfast narcotic dealer. While some other criminals could be suspicious of the gang's intentions, Lawlor believed they wouldn't cross him because they would be terrified of him. In a way, he was brought down by his own vanity. The young gangsters gained his trust by giving him a weapon. However, it was fitted with blanks, so Lawlor didn't stand a chance against his assailant. It shows Lawlor wasn't as smart as he thought he was. Lawlor's death made his rivals jubilant. Cornelius Price posted his picture on social media, toasting to the news of his elimination. Having paid €100,000 to ensure Lawlor's assassination through his contacts in Mountjoy prison, the news of his death was bound to make him happy. As for Price himself, he had moved his family to Manchester for safety. Price wasn't an angel himself, but even for him, Lawlor's act had crossed a moral line. Nevertheless, only a few months after taking out Mulready-Woods in a horrifying manner, he himself was slayed by his rivals. By this time, he was a suspected hitman in at least 5 other gangland executions. For Keane's elimination, Lawlor had planned to use a strong alibi that he was watching popular reality TV series Love Island in a close pal's house and eating a curry dinner while the teen's body parts were thrown from a car in the Coolock's Moteview estate. The incident shocked the whole country due to its brutality.
They took upon themselves to be judge and jury and executioner. What arrogance! What an appalling wickedness and real evil.
While most of the people believed that Keane was just a child and didn't deserve this treatment in any case, some people opined that when you dabble in crime, you have to pay the price. Moreover, according to the latter group, the teen was no angel himself. He was a low-ranking enforcer of a gang and played double games by working for both sides. He had earlier threatened a woman to pay up her debt. What's more, the boy was on bail and under curfew when he went missing. You live by the sword, you die by it. Had he been alive, he would have been a skilled, brutal criminal himself. Which view do you support? It's okay to sympathise with Keane regardless of his past deeds, or should we keep in view his crimes while pitying him? Let us know in the comments. Coming to the crime perpetrators, while Lawlor met death before he could be brought to justice, his accomplices in the gruesome elimination were ensnared. He may have made the decision to commit the act, but there were others who helped him by luring the teen to the house that night, disposing of his body parts, and so on. Gerald Cruz was charged with facilitation of the teen's elimination. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 7 years. Another criminal who played a major role in the crime was Paul Crosby. He also pled guilty to the same charge and was sentenced to 10 years. Crosby had lured Mulready-Woods to his death. He had met the teen, paid for his taxi fare and took him to the car that was driven by Cruz to the crime scene. Moreover, the pair boarded a van which may have been used to transport Mulready-Woods' remains, as the Gardaí found his bone fragments in the van later. Cruz also provided bags later found at the crime scene. One of the bags contained a drill. Can you imagine the extent of the brutality the unfortunate teen met before dying? Nevertheless, Cruz also brought false registration plates for the car used to move the human remains to Dublin. While there was no evidence the 2 men were present when the crime took place, Crosby was in contact with Lawlor by phone. The officers also found both men's phones at the crime scene. Are you surprised both men weren't tried for more serious charges like execution? Initially, they were, but then dropped as part of a deal. Another criminal, Gerald McKenna, also faced charges of destroying evidence. The burn site from where Mulready-Woods' blood-stained ballistic vest, along with rubber gloves, part of a sofa and a box of Swiss Army knives were discovered, was near McKenna's house. Moreover, the car containing a blood-stained axe and a bone fragment was parked in the laneway at the back of his house. The keys were found in the house as well. The roles of lesser-known players like Jed McKenna further demonstrated the pervasive reach of the gangs. McKenna, a trusted facilitator, was instrumental in destroying evidence related to Keane's murder, including disposing of blood-stained items and concealing weapons. His actions, driven by fear of reprisal from more powerful figures, highlighted how deeply the feud had penetrated into the fabric of Droghed's criminal ecosystem. Sentenced to 4 years in prison, McKenna's case underscored the gang's ability to coerce individuals into complicity through threats and intimidation. McKenna knew Mulready-Woods when he was growing up. He was one of a number of men identified by Gardaí at the start of the Drogheda feud whose lives were in danger. Two other criminals, Stephen Carberry and Glenn Bride, were charged in 2024 for disposal of Keane's body parts and burning the Volvo V40 car to hide the crime. The Gardaí also dismantled the gangs engaged in the Drogheda narcotics feud. By 2023, 3 of the 4 leaders of the two sides fled the country with arrest warrants issued against them. All the other players are either in jail, dead, or have fled. What's more, authorities know where they are hiding, which means they can apply for international arrest warrants if the need arises. As for the feud, a total of 203 people were arrested in connection with the feud that kept on going until March the 13th, 2022. The Gardaí had issued 374 charges and 266 summonses. This was possible only with the authorities' resolve and hard work to curb the crimes. Gardaí's Operation Stratus, launched in 2020 to combat the feuding mobs, left the gangs in turmoil. Under this operation, there were 975 drug searches, 1,287 checkpoints and 6,505 patrols in the same year. Moreover, the Criminal Assets Bureau acted under the same operation to seize 2 mobile homes valued at €20,000 each and 2 plush Audi A6s. Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau also hit the Maguire gang with the raids, intercepting products and seizing weapons. Chief Superintendent Mangan thanked the people of Drogheda for their support as they came out in droves in a march against violence. It was a particularly challenging time for us, dealing with 2 warring gangs, trying to take control of a town and its drug-dealing market. But we received phenomenal support from the public, and it's really appreciated. We get a lot of intelligence from members of the public as regards to drug dealing and who's involved in it, he said. The initiative led to the arrest of 93 dealers and the seizure of nearly €1 million in narcotics and cash. These numbers underscored the scale of the feud's influence, but also the resolve of the Gardaí. As for the leaders of the warring factions, Cornelius Price died from a fatal disease while Carberry had already been taken out. Of the remaining gangsters, Maguire tries to remain out of the headlines, with a few exceptions that we'll come to later, and the 2 brothers remain on the run. In 2022, Maguire made the headlines again for using the vehicle recovery business as a front for narcotic deals. After his close associate Cornelius Price's death, he tried to keep to himself, only appearing on the news once in 2024, showing pleasure at the splitting up of his rival siblings duo, which brings us to the remaining leaders of the warring factions, the 2 brothers who were on the run. While holed up abroad, these 2 brothers initially ran the narcotics business in Ireland. However, they split up in 2024, with one brother staying in Dubai, the long-standing haven of major criminals, including the Kinahans, and the other staying in Thailand. For many families, the feud meant living in a constant state of anxiety. People kept their windows shut and their children indoors, wary of stray bullets or sudden outbreaks of violence. The psychological toll was immense. Parents grappled with the fear of their children being drawn into gang activities, either through coercion or as innocent victims. Schools in the affected areas reported increased absenteeism, as parents were too scared to let their children leave home. One of the most heartbreaking impacts was on families witnessing others being targeted by the gangs. Homes were petrol bombed, vehicles set alight, and loved ones kidnapped or assaulted. In one chilling incident, a family home was targeted repeatedly, with bricks thrown through windows and vehicles rammed, leaving residents feeling unsafe even within their own walls. The feud's reach extended beyond Drogheda, impacting surrounding communities and tarnishing the town's reputation. Nationally and internationally, Drogheda became a symbol of gang violence, overshadowing its rich history and cultural significance. Reports of gruesome crimes and retaliatory attacks dominated headlines, painting a picture of a town trapped in chaos. Tourists avoided Drogheda, depriving it of much-needed revenue, while potential investors hesitated, wary of the instability. Despite the bleakness, there were glimmers of hope. Residents bandied together in marches and protests, demanding an end to the violence. Organisations like the Red Door Project and the Family Addiction Support Network worked tirelessly to address underlying issues like drug addiction and youth involvement in crime. These initiatives, though small in scale, offered a roadmap for healing and rebuilding. The government's response to the feud was criticised as reactive rather than proactive. While additional Gardaí were deployed, residents felt the measures came too late to prevent the worst atrocities. Calls for community policing and investments in youth programs grew louder as people sought long-term solutions rather than short-term fixes. Ultimately, the Drogheda feud left an indelible mark on the town and the surrounding areas. The psychological and social scars will take years, if not decades, to heal. However, the resilience of the community and its willingness to confront violence and advocate for change remains a beacon of hope amid the darkness. The Drogheda feud placed Gardaí in an unprecedented battle against organised crime, testing the limits of their resources and strategy. Early attempts to manage the violence were fraught with challenges. The feud had taken deep root within the town, spreading its influence across neighbouring areas and even infiltrating other regions of Ireland. With escalating gang activity came an urgent need for heightened police intervention. Gardaí faced a monumental task, dismantling two highly organised and deeply entrenched criminal networks. Each gang had layers of foot soldiers, enforcers and financiers, making it difficult to target key players. Their operations extended beyond Drogheda, with connections to Dublin, Meath and further afield. Yet, despite limited resources, law enforcement agencies were determined to prevent further bloodshed. High-profile incidents like the arrest of Paul Crosby and Gerard Cruz demonstrated both the success and limitations of Gardaí efforts. While these arrests removed dangerous enablers from the streets, the top leadership of both gangs remained elusive. Several key figures had fled to Spain or other international locations, using their connections to continue operations from afar. Despite these successes, the feud's pervasive nature exposed systematic issues. The reliance on temporary measures, such as increased patrols and high visibility policing, often failed to address the root causes of gang proliferation. Social and economic disparities in Drogheda fueled the cycle of violence, providing fertile ground for gang recruitment. Law enforcement also struggled with the spectacle of gang culture perpetuated online. Social media became a tool for gangs to showcase their power, intimidate rivals and attract new recruits. Videos of masked men issuing threats, boasting of attacks and displaying firearms spread fear and emboldened the gangs. For Gardaí, combating this virtual presence posed a new kind of challenge. However, the crackdown did yield tangible results. Life-saving interventions such as seizing firearms before planned attacks, preventing additional casualties. The deployment of armed patrols and checkpoints disrupted the gang's ability to operate openly. Moreover, community marches and public demonstrations against violence emboldened residents and signalled a shift in public sentiment. Drogheda's gang feuds thrust the Gardaí into high-stakes battle against organised crime, with escalating violence that demanded a response both immediate and strategic. The sheer brutality of incidents, from firebombings to dismemberment, require an overhaul of traditional policing tactics and the mobilisation of significant resources to restore order into a town gripped by fear. From the outset, the Gardaí prioritised intelligence gathering, with both gangs employing extreme violence and a network of young foot soldiers to carry out their operations. The authorities needed a deeper understanding of their structures and plans. Task forces were assembled, comprising specialists in organised crime, surveillance and forensic investigations. Operations were overseen by Drogheda's chief superintendent, who coordinated efforts with national agencies to counteract the gang's far-reaching influence. Ultimately, the Gardaí's response to the Drogheda feud has been a mix of triumphs and tribulations. The dismantling of key networks and the restoration of semblance of peace stand as significant achievements. However, the persistence of organised crime underscores the need for continued vigilance and innovation in tackling the evolving challenges posed by these groups. As Drogheda rebuilds, the lessons learnt from the Gardaí's operations will undoubtedly shape the future of law enforcement in Ireland's fight against organised crime. The scars of the feud may never fully fade, but the resilience of the town and the dedication of its protectors remain a beacon of hope in the face of darkness. The Drogheda feud serves as a sobering case study in the consequences of inaction and the resilience of communities in the face of adversity. While the scars left may never fully heal, the lessons learned provide a roadmap for a future where such tragedies are prevented. By addressing the systemic issues that fuel organised crime and fostering a culture of accountability and support, Ireland can honour the memory of those who suffered and pave the way for lasting change.